So our first plenary session is a conversation with Jane Peckham, who is our Deputy General Secretary, and she's going to be interviewed by Claire Ward, who is the Chair of the Equal Opportunities Committee. So welcome, Jane, and off you go.
Thank you very much, Sharon. I am sat here like this because that light is really bright. So when I come to questions, you're going to have to give me, thank you. I was just about to say, you're going to have to give me a second because all I can see is dots. But welcome everybody. I hope you've had a good morning. Jen and I are just going to have a bit of a chat. We did this at one of the other consultation conferences, didn't we? And we enjoyed it. We don't know about the rest of you, but we had fun.
So Sharon says I'm being interviewed. I don't know if it's an interviewing, a grilling, or a bit of a chat, Claire, but let's see where we get to.
Usually a bit of a chat, Jane, hopefully, but you never know with us. So come on then, let's make a start.
Okay.
I've got a question for you, the first one. Obviously, we're here at the Women's Consultation Conference. So, what do you think are the most pressing equality issues currently facing women teachers, and how are we as NASUWT prioritising these within our wider campaigning?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because what issues aren't important for women? If I can just start by saying it's absolutely brilliant to be here, Claire. Look at the people in the room, it's excellent. But for a union where the members are majority women, all of the issues that affect women are absolutely key. Just a bit of a list. Obviously, workload is a major issue. The issue with teaching, again, is workload's always going to be an issue because it's never a job that you can just put down at the end of the day. I used to be very envious of my husband when he was a firefighter. He went to work, he worked really hard, but he came home and that was it.
If you hadn't burnt the tea.
But for us as teachers, you could never not work. But the pressure that's put on members now, you know, it doesn't make you a better teacher to work 22 hours a day. That's a fallacy. And trying to find tools and advice for members to best advise them to manage their own is one thing. But actually our job as a union is to challenge employers for putting unreasonable expectations on our members, particularly our women members, where caring and parental responsibility still tends to be the majority for women. You've been in a workshop this morning with my colleague Paul. I feel I've got my back to you over there, I'm sorry. I could have a conversation out this year and look at them on the employment rights. I mean, maternity. Maternity is a major campaign now for us. We have now set a policy of campaigning for 26 weeks, but moving up, hopefully, to the full 52 weeks. And we have a 10-point plan for that. So I'd urge members to look at that. Flexible working. Actually, in I was going to say my youth, but I was an adult. When I started teaching, I think I was one of the first people to job share in our local authority. They didn't even have a policy on it. And that was because I had young children. And I absolutely advocate for flexible working, the benefits of it, not just to members, but to the profession, because you can focus more on your part of I was a primary teacher, so, you know, we had to cover everything. But it's such a positive experience, and it's a positive experience for the children in your class, because they have two minds, two sets of skills, and they benefit from that. So all of those things, we have to keep campaigning to make it as easy and as flexible for our members to continue to have a career, which is your right, but also to undertake other things as well. Because let's be frank, if you don't have an interest outside of the world of teaching, you're not going to be a very good teacher. No. You have to have that balance, and flexible working will bring that to most people. Obviously, women's health and all the issues around that, and the issue of pay and progression, because that still remains. We took a couple of motions to TUC, as you know, around the Worker Protection Act, which gives stronger protection for women, but also around the digital violence, and we'll come to that in a bit more detail later. And for our women's health agenda, That's why we have a workshop at every event that we run around women's health, whether it's around the menopause, endometriosis, all other women's health matters. It's absolutely key as a union that has majority women that's a major focus of our work campaign. But we rely on hearing from our members to make sure that we're getting it right.
Yep.
I think that's the key. The issue of the ban on mobile phones, obviously, a big topic. We've been campaigning for a long time. We're also doing that internationally. You've seen the strategy that's been set in Australia. And I think what's interesting is there's criticism of that already, but it's going to take a few years to bed in. There's obviously workarounds, but, you know, we'll get there. We base our comments and interventions on the responses from the surveys that we send out to yourselves, and it's really important. I'm sure some of you go, oh God, another survey. But you know as well with the EOC committee, it's really important that we hear back. You're also going to hear from Esther Gay next session about the campaigning on this, and I think it'll be a really interesting session. The use of AI for women, particularly the deep fakes, the non-consensual sharing of images, that's something that we've been campaigning for a long time. And we're involved in many ways through our own government, but also internationally. And I will talk a bit later about the international work, but one of the key focuses for us in that was around this abuse of AI. And I think it's really interesting that you're seeing it appearing in soap operas and all that kind of thing, because that's one useful way of actually getting the message to parents out there that maybe haven't thought about it. You know, some people are critical of that, but my personal view is if you're sitting watching EastEnders and there's a bit of a storyline around the internet issues for young men, for example, it might just click something in your own brain as a parent, you know, what's my son doing or what's my daughter experiencing? So all of these are really useful. And finally, we passed motions at the conference last month, obviously, around the abuse of social media and tech and that whole misogynoir agenda. And they are now key campaigning priorities for us moving forwards. So a very long list, and I've probably missed half of it out.
I mean, to be fair, if Jane was to sit here and go over everything that we're doing and the issues which women face as teachers and how the NASUWT can support you, we'd be here for the entire session talking about that. I mean, I was in the employment rights workshop that Paul did myself earlier on, and I was thinking about the flexible working, and it was only the other day I had what felt like yet another conversation with a woman who wanted to apply for flexible working so that on her days off she could catch up with what she'd missed or what she wasn't having time to do in work. And we, as Paul was saying, and as we say constantly as caseworkers and union representatives, you know, there is a really short word. That word's no. You know, and if you can use that more often, use your contract, look at what you are being asked to do. Nobody will take offence if you say, look, no, sorry, or no, I'm not doing this during the time I'm not in work because I've got flexible working. You know, it's awful that women feel that they need to use that time, that they're not being paid to catch up on work that they're being asked to do.
And that relates to the point I was making about the pressure, because to say no is an absolute right, and it can't be really argued with because you have a contract. And I think that pressure, you know, your employer might dangle promotion in front of you, or, well, if you, and it's the same with things like extracurricular stuff. That's not in your contract. You don't have to be doing these things. And it's part of what we should be doing as a collective, as you supporting your colleagues, is to support people in saying no. Because you cannot fulfill everything. And the expectations are just increasing and increasing.
Yeah, and I think
So
if one person does the thing that they're not meant to be doing, that then sets a benchmark for other people to be thinking, well, you know, they've done it, I better do it as well. So we're letting each other down if we're not asserting our contracts and we're not saying no. So it is really important that we can get that message across, especially to our women members who, let's face it, are holding the profession together.
Absolutely.
Just going to move on because I had a little bit, and I'm looking at Ro Martin, my fellow national executive colleague here, had a little bit of a happy dance at exec last Friday. Because, and I suppose we're doing the soft launch here now, National Executive last week endorsed significant financial resources to a partnership with a project called UK Feminista. Now, UK Feminista are a leading women's rights campaign organisation, and as I say, I suppose we're kind of soft launching this now, but more will come out over the coming weeks, hopefully next week as well. This project is going to provide joint partnership between ourselves and UK Feminista for providing comprehensive resources for schools, head teachers, teachers in general on tackling misogyny and sexism. It's much needed. The resources at the minute are 10 years out of date, but UK Feminista have approached us to do this piece of work with them. So we're really looking forward to starting that project. We know about the rise in sexism, we know about the rise in misogyny and misogynoir, and it's a really important piece of work that we're going to be doing. That wasn't a question.
Well, I'm glad.
The question is, given that the union has committed this huge financial resource to tackling sexual harassment and misogyny, how will it connect with what the union does internally to protect women members and our staff from sexual harassment within the union?
I knew you'd be pleased at the outcome of the
Did a little
decision,
happy elbow
Claire.
dance.
And
Yeah.
you're right, it is quite a large, it's not massive, but it's a large financial commitment. But I think that shows the commitment that we have.
Yeah.
I mean, I would challenge maybe or suggest that there's not one person sitting here that hasn't been subject to misogyny or sexual harassment of some form or other in their lifetime, just by the nature of being a female. And the expectation almost of, well, I don't need to do anything about it. But over the last many years, the problem has been getting worse and worse and worse. So the union has taken really serious steps to look at addressing this, and we've had work ongoing for a long time on it. A lot of work at the moment to review our sexual harassment policy across the union and the procedures. And we set up the sexual harassment task group, but also from a senior management point of view, we've been looking at that with the national officers. We also have internal for our staff support within that. And what we realised very quickly was our policies and procedures were horrendous. They didn't allow for proper action to be taken. And we take this really seriously. Very few unions do, actually. Very few, and you'll have seen some of the high publicised cases of other trade unions where this issue has been prevalent for a long time. But they don't have internal policies. I mean, as an executive member, we now have internal policies even to challenge our most senior elected. I'm not suggesting there's an issue within, certainly at the moment, but there was nothing. There was, and another example is there was nothing for a member of the staff within the union to challenge a lay member or a lay activist or an executive member for any inappropriate behaviour. And so we've done a huge amount of work on that. We've also invested in the organisation called the Survivors Trust, which is the confidential helpline for members to report any issues of sexual harassment within our own union. Obviously, if it happens at work, then you report it through the union and we take it up with the employer. But it's really important that we have a system within our own union so that we can be held accountable and our activists can be held accountable for inappropriate behaviour against another member. I think the concern at the moment is it's not being very well utilised.
Yeah.
And there may be a concern about confidentiality, for example, and I recognise that. It is a confidential reporting helpline, but there's a challenge within that, in that if there is a massive issue raised with someone and we don't know who it is, how do we then address that for that person other than the overarching issue? But it is a really good organisation, and I would encourage people to look into that more carefully, or use it if you're being an ally to someone else that you've witnessed suffering poor behaviour from anyone within the union. So we do encourage members to report. One of the key things that we're doing at the moment, and we have done, is amending our own rules. As I said, they were really out of date, so that anyone who is a perpetrator of sexual harassment or any other form of abuse, frankly, against another member, does actually face action now through the Rule 27 process. Sexual harassment or accusations of was not even classed as gross misconduct in the previous rules. And now it is automatically looked at through that with a zero tolerance. So you will hear stories from before where people maybe have raised an issue and it wasn't well dealt with, and we've put our hands up to that as a union, but that's not how we deal with things now. So hopefully that will be supportive.
Yeah, and we have been working for a while with, you know, this isn't something new. As Jane said, we have been working for a while around our anti-sexual harassment policies, and we have reconvened the anti-sexual harassment group to look again at that policy. Is it too clunky? Is there too much in it that doesn't actually need to be there? It could be somewhere else in maybe a guidance type document, because we want to make sure that our policies are accessible for members, because nobody needs to be wading through a massive long document. If you've just been sexually harassed, you want to know where to go, how to do it, without the purgatory of having to read through a however many page document. So we are looking at our own practices again to make sure that they're right and they're fit for purpose.
Yeah, and also it's a continual process. So it's not about, well, we've reviewed the rules, they've been agreed, etc. That's it, tick that box. We learn through every experience. So through disciplinaries, for example, or cases or Rule 27s, we can learn from that where the weaknesses are still perhaps in our own policies and procedures, and refine them again and again. And using other organisations to support that and the data that we gather. So it is a continual improvement, but I do want to emphasise that point that we do need to reassure our women members that they are safe to report, and things will be improved as we go on. So.
And we're also convening as well a Black Women's Sexual Harassment group, made up of staff and lay side as well, because we know that there are very different experiences that our Black women members come across when they're subject to misogynoir and sexual harassment as well. So that is something that we are working on, and we're looking to take in as part of all the anti-sexual harassment work that we're doing as well.
And I think it's really important to thank the members that are involved in that, the committee and the staff as well, because you need to have people that have had those experiences as part of making that change.
Absolutely.
You know, you can't get the answer out a book or whatever. It's all about that shared experience. We have different staff forums as well now, the Women's Staff Forum, the Black Staff Forum, members, disabled, LGBTI, etc. And they're providing huge learning opportunities for us as an employer, but also it informs some of the work that we might do to improve life for our members as well. So everything all adds up to being a much better way to manage these things.
And all linking in with all of our advisory committees too. It isn't just a one-way thing by any stretch of the imagination. I want to get on to the international work, Jane. So, two-part question. I'm going to throw them both at you so you can answer them in whatever order you like.
I know, because I didn't really know how to split them, to be honest, but that's fine.
So, firstly, International campaigns, how can members engage meaningfully with them and understand the relevance to the profession here in the UK? And secondly, how can the international work strengthen our domestic campaigning, particularly around standards and expectations and highlighting them?
Yeah, and I kind of asked for the opportunity a bit to share as the lead on our union's international work. And I think the answer to your question, how can members engage meaningfully, is, first of all, they need to know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're not very good at sharing. You hear rumours of, oh, so-and-so went to this, and what are we doing? The NASUWT is actually one of the founding members of Education International, which covers, I can't remember the exact figure, but it's about 150 different countries across the world, all involved in education. And that was through Nigel de Groot, chair, sadly, we lost him earlier this year. And it's an organisation that has huge power and works with the OECD, for example, to improve education and the profession across the world. And we're involved in many different ways. We have involvement at UK level, we have involvement European level, and also across the world in terms of the different regions that exist. And I came quite new to this because I was, as you know, the national official in Scotland before I took up the role of Deputy General Secretary. And I used to hear things like, oh, so-and-so's off to this place to do whatever. I'd be like, what are they doing? What are they doing? What does that mean? And I get asked that a lot. How does the NASUWT benefit from that involvement? And I would counteract that with, well, we do, but actually it's not just about what it does for us. It's about what we can do for other nations, war-torn nations, nations where women don't have a voice. We have identified a number of priority nations, if you like, through our work. One of them being Bahrain, for example, where some of you will know of Jalila, who was imprisoned, etc., just for being a trade unionist. We have worked with the Arabic nations, and I'm very pleased that the chair of the Cross Arab Nations now is a woman. They have many more women activists within their network. That doesn't come easy. But if you can support and you can campaign with them and raise the issues across the wider network, it helps to put pressure on some of that. So I am working with colleagues to try and look at how we can better inform you as our members of the work that we're doing internationally. We used to have what they called the International Solidarity magazine, which whilst was a very good read, by the time it got out, it was usually out of date and so on. So I am working with our comms teams to look at different ways to share that. Also to look at how we can bring the issues more to the fore in terms of motions and so on, and raising them at TUC. We have colleagues, Jennifer, for example, is on the committee for the European TUC for education. We have other colleagues involved in OECD. The main themes at the moment are EI and education, protecting the public education sector. There's some climate change work, but a lot on the life of a woman as a teacher across the world. And I was very privileged to attend the UN Commission on the Status for Women event in March this year. Claire will know it's something I've wanted to attend for about 20 years. Never had the opportunity, but really, really proud to have been representing us at that. Hundreds, if not thousands, of trade union women across the world getting together at the UN with governments. We had UK ministers there, but from across all over. It's held in New York every year. And it's not a woohoo, let's go to New York now, a bit of a week away. It is really intensive. that you're attending meetings, you're attending voting sessions, you're meeting with hundreds and hundreds of different events outside. But the main positive is that meeting and liaison with other trade unions across the world, the networking. We were also very privileged to be invited as NASUWT to the headquarters of Google, where there's a lot of work going on around the non-consensual sharing of internet images. We've been doing work with an organisation in the UK. And I met Alex Davis-Jones, the MP there, who was part of the panel. So really just campaigning, getting our message out there, sharing the work that you've been doing in the UK and taking it forward to benefit others. And from that commission comes a whole list, which I won't read out to you, of the commitments that were made at that conference. And what then happens is we take them and we weave it into our policy work, our engagement with governments, our engagement with the Europeans and so on, to try and ensure that the commitments that are made from the UN are embedded in all of our work. And that's really where we benefit. And we also learn, I know I'm waffling, we'll probably run out of time, but we met, and Jennifer will agree, we met the most amazing young woman from India. And this is about the activism side of things. She's a young woman, she's a teacher, she has 2 young children, and she's been trying to become active within her teaching union in India for some time. And they have reserved seats for women in the union, but she kept coming up against the men campaigning to have the reserved seat given to a man. So it's literally taken her 4 years to be elected as an activist in the union. And what did she do then? She spent, I was amazed, she spent 33 days going round the whole of India in a bus, taking 3 meetings a day in local, effectively, associations to try and encourage young women to become more active in the union. She did all that, and she had to change every day into her sari because it's very frowned upon as a woman if you don't have the formal attire on. And she also drove the bus. And she was away from home for over a month. She paid for it herself. She doesn't have facility time. And I mean, I have never been more inspired by one individual activist than I was by meeting Seema. We did invite her to conference, but unfortunately, the timescale was too short for her visa. But I tell you, colleagues, I will ensure that we get her there next year because she's just so inspiring. But work like that's going on across the world. And where we struggle to get time out to be active, you can imagine how difficult it is for a woman in a nation where, 1, you're not viewed as an equal, and 2, politically, there's opposition to your involvement. So it's, I mean, I could talk for hours on it, but it's inspiring, and we bring a wealth of experience and knowledge to support those who are starting on their journey and building that community across the world.
Well, we haven't got long left, but just taking it on from that point that you've just raised, I'm kind of going to mix up my 2 last questions. Because obviously we've got these campaigns, and we want to make sure that members are engaged and are given opportunities to move them forward. But in particular, if we're thinking about younger teachers or those who are earlier on in the careers, we need to make sure that they're fully engaged as well. So thinking of Seema, the young woman from India who you met, how do you think we can do that for our members?
Well, I mean, it's essential that we do. Absolutely. Because, you know, we've got a number of activists that are, you know, continually busy, but we don't have enough. And the world of teaching is becoming, particularly in England, so complex and diverse that people don't have time. But actually, to become involved, which frankly you've all done today by sitting here, this is the first, well, for many of you, you're active for a long time, but there'll be some first-timers here. This is their first time coming along. It's about education and information. Firstly, we need to let our members know how they can become involved and what they can become involved in. And it's not always about becoming a local secretary or a negotiating secretary or whatever. That's a path for a lot of people who have an interest.
Yep.
But we have a massive equalities agenda. We also have many other different things. And we also need to be looking at our structures to try and challenge the barriers that face people in becoming officially activists,
Yeah.
you know, being elected to posts. My own activism began with, frankly, a dissatisfaction of the union that I was in, and coming to this union where, I won't tell you how long ago it was, but it's nearly, well, it's a lot longer than 20 years, let's put it that way. Primary teacher, joining a union where everyone was secondary teachers, male, Catholic sector. And we, as a primary school, joined en masse to the NASUWT because we had a difficult head teacher. So we went to a meeting. What an experience that was. They didn't even know what to do with us. The stuff they talked about was alien to us and so on. But then I got involved in doing student recruitment.
Yeah.
And that really piqued my interest. And so I started. Anyway, long story short, worked my way up. Here I am now. But there's always an avenue for someone who wants to become active, and it doesn't always require massive time commitment. We know the issue with facility time. We can't do much about that except continue to campaign for it. But in all honesty, colleagues, the work of a trade union activist is largely done in your own time.
Yeah.
You know that.
It is,
You're not paid to do it.
No.
But it's about having that ethos around you and that will to engage with and to support other people that are in the same position as you or that you feel you can support. So small examples, like we do student recruitment every year. The regions and nations get their lists of who's joined. You know, somebody could spend a couple of hours every so often just contacting the people in your local association and saying, oh, I gather you've joined us. You know, you don't have to be a school rep to do that. I'm quite early in my career. I joined the union 2 years ago. How are you finding things? Just having that contact.
And that would take so much pressure off your secretaries and your caseworkers.
Exactly.
Because with the best will in the world, I'm negotiating secretary for my patch. And I'd love to be able to get into schools and to organise and to do all those things and to contact those people who've newly joined and people who are new to teaching or younger members. But the drain at the minute on your elected representatives who are doing casework is absolutely massive.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need many more women caseworkers as well.
We do.
We are making strides. I was going to say we'd improved the senior leadership, but we've now got only one woman on the officers committee. But for a while it was all women. So, you know, things go in swings and roundabouts. But we need to continue to build. And how you build the union and how you support members is from the ground up.
Absolutely.
It's school-based organising that we need to be doing. Every school should have a rep, not someone that's constantly having to negotiate and all the rest, but just someone that brings the members together and gives them information and has the conversations. And we really need to continue to build that. But for young members, and as I say, I was captured back in my young day, and it's a bit like once you're in, you can't get out, but you don't want to, and the people you meet and the things you learn. But we already have been doing a lot with our Young Members Advisory Committee. We've got 3 representatives now on the TUC Young Workers Committee. Don't think that's ever been done before, and that's absolutely brilliant. So they're able to influence work at the TUC level across the wider trade union movement. It's a challenge to engage our younger members. Although teaching is a massively highly unionised profession, when you come into it, you're so busy trying to get through your induction and make your way in the world that you kind of park the union. And we need to look for ways to engage our younger members and support them. We've got to remove the barriers because they are the lifeblood of the union. You know, in 30 years' time, not all of us will still be sitting here, but we need the room fuller than it is now. And it's not a choice, colleagues, between becoming a union activist or doing well in your career. You can do both, genuinely, but you will need support for that. But we know that we've got many young members out there who are active in the union, engaging for our young members, and we welcome more and more.
I'm going to stop the DGS speaking now.
I can see the zeros there. I know.
Absolute zeros. They've been on red for the past 2 minutes, Jane.
Sorry.
Unfortunately, we don't have time for any questions. But, Jane, I think the important thing is if we can explain to you, so you can take back into your workplaces the work that the union is doing, especially in this context for our women members, I think that you've shone a light on that phenomenal of us today.
And also, if you are sitting there thinking, how could I get more active in this, that and the other, drop me in an email if you want to ask, or contact your national executive member and say, I'm really interested in just this little part of it. It doesn't have to be overwhelming, but it can be so rewarding. Absolutely. So thank you very much for listening to me rambling on.
Thank you, Jane.